All right, hello once again. This is Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College, and as part of the Rankin Technical College AWD 1000 Web Development Technologies class, I've been going through a series of video presentations that I'm creating based off of the Mozilla Developer Network Learn Web Development series. I'm in the JavaScript section, and we're talking about client-side storage. Now, we left off last time. We went through an indexed DB example, but we said that the problem with that was that even though it was a great improvement over our web storage example, the HTML, CSS, and JavaScript files still need to be downloaded each time the site is accessed. In other words, it won't work without an internet connection. So as mentioned here, it says this is where service workers and the closely related cache API come in. So you'll notice, as it says here, a service worker is a JavaScript file that is registered against a particular website or part of a website or whatever when it's accessed by the browser. When registered, it can control pages available at that origin. All right, when it intercepts a request, it can do anything you wish to do to it. But the classic example is saving network responses offline and then providing those in response to the request instead of responses from the network. In effect, it allows you to make a website work completely offline. All right. So as mentioned here, the cache API is another client-side storage mechanism with a little difference. It's designed to save HTTP responses. All right, so it works very well with service workers. Now they're going to go through an example here. It's a short example, so this tape may not be particularly long. But again, I wanted to break it up because it is a totally different topic than the index DB that we had been talking about for the previous few videos. So it says, let's look at an example to give you a bit of an idea of what this might look like. We've created another version of the video store example. This functions identically, except that it also saves the HTML, the CSS, and the JavaScript in the cache API via a service worker, allowing the example to run offline. So here's an example of it. All right. And you saw, hopefully you see that it's coming up. It looks just like the other one looked like that we ran previously, which was, I don't know, thought we had it, but let's do this. Let's open that up in a new link. All right, so the first thing of note here, so let's bring this up, right mouse click, and view the page source. Again, I need the index one. So again, I'm going to bring that up. And again, bring it up in here. All right. Again, this is commented up the wazoo here, which is a good idea. So it says the first thing to note is there's an extra bit of code in the main JavaScript file. All right, first we do a feature detection to see if the service worker is available in the navigator object. And I want to make sure I'm actually bringing up the right one here. So let's see. Let's see the source code. Well, that's what we wanted. And I want the index.js. So I want all this. There it is. All right, probably was the same thing, but I just am trying to make sure for completeness sake that I'm giving you the right code here. All right, in fact, let's take a look at what they show here. So if service worker in Navigator, as it says, register the service worker to control making the site work offline. All right, so we only want to do this if indeed that's been set up. The given path here, it says, is relative to the site origin, not the JavaScript file that contains the code. The service worker is here. The origin is here, so the path is here. says if you wanted to host this example on your own server, you'd have to update this accordingly. So this is rather confusing, but it's the way that you have to do it. All right. The next time any page under the service worker's control is accessed, for example, when the example is reloaded, the service worker is installed against that page that it will start controlling it. When this occurs, an install event is fired. As it says there, you can write code inside of this to respond to the installation. All right. Let's take a look at the example in the SW service worker.js file. It says you'll see that an installer is registered against self. Self is a keyword to refer to global scope. It's not the word this that we talked about earlier, it's the word self. All right. Inside the install handler, we use the extendable event.waitUntil method to signal that the browser shouldn't complete installation of the service worker until the promise that's associated with it has successfully been fulfilled. Here is where we see the cache API in action. We use its open method to open a new cache object in which responses can be stored. So you've got to look at it this way. What we're saying is we want to be able to keep working on our project even when we don't have an internet connection. All right, and in order to do that, we have to have something we can save it to. So we're saving it to the machine itself by using the cache API. With the service worker registered and installed against the HTML page and all relevant assets added to the cache, we're nearly ready to go. There's only one more thing to do. Write some code to respond to further network requests. It says that is what the second bit of code in the sw.js file does. We add another listener called scope. All right. We add another listener called scope, which runs the handler function when the fetch is raised. This happens whenever the browser makes a request for an asset in the directory the service worker is registered against. All right. Inside the handler, we first log the URL of the requested asset, then provide a custom response. Inside of here, we call the match to check whether there's a matching request. If it's found, we return it as a response. If not, we fetch the response from the network and return that instead. Now, it says, oh yeah, and that's all for this. No, there's a lot more to it. All right. So it says if you want more, and this example probably didn't even pay for me to go over it, but you could go out to, as it says, this service worker cookbook and learn more. All right. Now, the good news is that's it for the JavaScript part. So we have now, we have now completed the getting started, which was this. We've completed the introduction to HTML, which is this, the multimedia and embedding, the HTML table, so the entire HTML structuring the web section. We've completed the entire CSS styling the web section, which was the CSS first step, the CSS building blocks, the styling text, and the CSS layout. Now we've also completed the JavaScript dynamic client-side scripting, which was our first steps, building blocks, objects, asynchronous JavaScript, and what we just finished, which was the client-side web API. So next, I'm going to go into something which has only two things in it, but the first one has got quite a bit. So we're going to go and talk about web forms to work with user data. We'll talk about that. And then it says there's some other articles in here which we'll quickly look at. All right, so I'll be back with that to start on the web forms section shortly.